Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with Helena Wadia. Coming up tonight, Suella Braverman is the latest candidate to be eliminated in the Conservative leadership race to replace Boris Johnson after finishing last in the second round of voting. Rishi Sunak got the most support with 101 votes. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says unions are causing misery following the news that more rail strikes will take place on 2 days later this month, as unions hit back at pay rises not in line with the cost of living crisis. We'll have an update on London's weather in the next 10 minutes. Plus, would you go to your pharmacist with a health problem? Research shows less than 10% of us take advantage of the expertise pharmacists have to offer. We'll be finding out more. And London's only contemporary art biennial is back this summer, celebrating the borough of Brent. We'll be speaking to those behind the project. First tonight, though, Suella Braverman has been eliminated from the Conservative leadership race after finishing last in the second round of voting with 27 votes. Rishi Sunak topped the poll with 101 votes, with Penny Mordaunt following close behind on 83 votes. Liz Truss remains in the race to replace Boris Johnson with 64 votes. Before the results were announced, she launched her campaign for the leadership in central London, promising bold economic leadership and saying she's ready from day one.
Now is the time to be bold. We cannot have business as usual economic management, which has led to low growth for decades. We need to deliver on Brexit and the opportunities it offers. And we need to win the fight for freedom at home and around the world. Yeah. That is why I am putting myself forward for leadership of the Conservative and Unionist Party and our great country. I will campaign as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. I can lead, I can make tough decisions and I can get things done. I am ready to be Prime Minister from day one.
Well, also in the race is Kemi Badenoch with 49 votes and Tom Tugendhat with 32, 5 fewer votes than in the first round. Well, allies of Tugendhat insisted he would not pull out of the leadership contest despite coming last in this round of voting, as he vowed to continue the campaign.
This is a really short interview round for a hell of a big job. I don't think it's that surprising that people who know all of us are pretty vocal about what they think of us. And I've had some friends say some very nice things about me. And I've had some people who I thought were friends saying things that were not quite so nice about me. So, you know, we all have to roll with it. That's part of the game.
Well, Tory MPs will continue to vote in subsequent rounds until 2 candidates are left, who will then battle it out over the summer to win the support of Conservative members, with their choice of the next Prime Minister being unveiled on September the 5th. Well, Boris Johnson will then formally hand over his resignation to the Queen. Now, the Metropolitan Police say they have opened an investigation into Sir Mo Farah's recent revelation that he was trafficked to the UK as a child. In a documentary for the BBC, Sir Mo said he arrived to the UK under a false name after escaping war in Somalia. Having previously said he came to the UK as a refugee with his parents, the runner now revealed he was taken in by a stranger and forced to be a domestic servant. The Met have now said specialist officers have opened an investigation and will assess the evidence, although no reports have been made to the force at this time. The Home Office have said the athlete will face no action. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has said that unions are causing misery following the news that members of the RMT union at Network Rail and 8 train companies will go on strike on July 27th. The union rejected a 3-year offer from Network Rail, which included a 4% backdated pay rise and a further 2% next year. The RMT are seeking a 7% pay rise and an increase in line with rising inflation due to the cost of living crisis. Well, here's how RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch responded on LBC Radio after Mr Shapps said that RMT bosses aren't interested in finding a solution.
They certainly were supportive in the previous phase when we took the 3 days. We had many members of the public coming up to us on the picket line, making donations, even members of the travelling public were very sympathetic to us. They're sick and tired of Grant Shapps and his formulations. Everywhere where he doesn't have the writ, in Scotland and in Wales and in London and in Merseyrail and in Newcastle, we have struck pay deals with these companies. He's stopping these pay deals coming through because government policy is to screw down workers' wages. That's part of their approach. It was before the latest inflation bubble, and it will be after. So they've got a permanent position that public sector workers should get poorer, and we've seen that over the last 12 years.
Well, that was Mick Lynch there, and also announced today, the union ASLEF have said that train drivers at 8 rail companies will also strike on July 30th, after talks broke down over a pay offer in line with the cost of living. Well, here in the capital, one of the 8 companies affected will be Arriva Rail London, who are the train operating company responsible for running the London Overground. Well, sticking with travel, the airline Emirates has announced that it will ignore an order from Heathrow Airport to cancel flights to comply with a cap on passenger numbers. The airline accused the West London Airport of giving them only 36 hours to comply with the capacity cuts and said they did not want to deny seats to tens of thousands of travellers. Well, on Tuesday, Heathrow announced a cap of 100,000 daily departing passengers until early September, leading to disruption and delays for passengers. Emirates called the plan unreasonable and said they would continue to operate as scheduled to and from Heathrow. Well, in a statement, a Heathrow spokeswoman said they had no choice, adding it would be disappointing if any airline would want to put profit ahead of a safe and reliable passenger journey. Now, the first lot of government money to help with soaring energy bills starts the rollout today, with many people expecting £326 to hit their accounts. However, many people across the capital are yet to receive the money. Well, Hebe Campbell has more.
Cost of living payment is trending on Twitter this morning as many families claim to not have received their cost of living payment promised by the government to help cushion the blow in rising costs on fuel, energy and food. Now, this payment is part of a cost of living support package worth £37 billion announced by Rishi Sunak in June. Around a quarter of families, so that's around 7 million bank accounts throughout the country, have been promised 2 payments, one of £326 this month and the other of £324 in the autumn. Well, while many expected their payments today, on the government website it actually says the payments will be received between today, so that's the 14th of July, up until the 31st of July, meaning their payments will be with them latest by the end of this month. As part of the same package, a £400 grant in October will be received by many to help ease the cost of spiralling energy bills set to worsen from now until the autumn. The elderly, disabled and low-income households will also receive target support, and pensioners' winter fuel poverty payment will be increased later this year.
There we are, that was Hebe Campbell there. Now, Oscar-winning actor Kevin Spacey has appeared in court at the Old Bailey, charged with 5 sexual offences dating back 17 years. He pleaded not guilty to the offences, which are alleged to have taken place in London and Gloucestershire between 2005 and 2013. The 62-year-old Hollywood actor denies the charges, and the trial date has been set for June next year. New figures have been released of hate crime offences in London football stadiums over the past year. There were more than 100 hate crimes recorded by the Met Police, including 83 public order offences, 60 of which were racially or religiously motivated. 18 violent hate crimes were also recorded. Well, an estimated 150,000 football fans attend games across the capital every week during the regular football season, and a 2018 report from anti-racism campaign Kick It Out found half of all fans surveyed had witnessed racist abuse at a football game. Well, Labour's London Assembly spokesperson for policing and crime said all Londoners must feel safe when supporting their team, without fear of intimidation or violence. Well, let's just take a look at the weather in London for you now. The heat wave continues, of course. This evening, it's another warm night with average temperatures of 13 degrees. Tomorrow, there's some cloud with sunny intervals and a gentle breeze, temperatures averaging 26. Over the weekend, it's heating up. 27 on Saturday, and as we hit Sunday, temperatures reaching around 32. And just a reminder, the Met Office has issued an amber warning of extreme heat, so do stay prepared, drink lots of water and look after yourselves. Time for a break now, but when we come back, London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers will be here to tell us all about the stories making headlines in the local papers, including a South London nursery with the worst Ofsted rating and some disgruntled Finsbury Park residents.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Now it's time for a look at the stories making headlines in the local papers. Well, here to take us through them is London Live's paper reviewer, Matt Withers. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's start with this. We had a story recently about a school in London being awarded a top rating, but now a nursery in South London has been awarded Ofsted's lowest rating.
Yeah, this is quite remarkable. It's from the New Recorder, and the headline is "Staff at Nursery Don't Understand How to Teach Children," Ofsted says. And you might think that that is the absolute basic that a nursery is doing, that knowing how to teach children should be a pretty low bar for the nursery to clear. But it's true. This is Blossom's Academy in Forest Gate. It was rated inadequate, which was a downgrade on its previous grading. Requires improvement. The Education Watchdog said that teaching at the nursery were not good. In a report, an inspector wrote, "Staff do not understand how to teach children." It added, "Staff do not have the skills and knowledge yet to competently keep children engaged in planned activities. This is particularly evident for children with special educational needs. This has an impact on the quality of education that children receive." It's frankly as damning, you think, as these reports could be.
Absolutely. Well, after receiving this rating, have the nursery responded at all?
Yeah, they have. The Blossoms Academy area manager, which I guess is the head in old money, Emma Houghton, said that they were upset and shocked after our result from our most recent inspection. However, we've been transparent with our parents, who we've been really supportive, been working closely with the local authority to ensure that we are ready for our next inspection.
Absolutely. Right. Well, sticking with South London, a 400-year-old tree in Merton has been cut down.
Yeah, these stories always incite quite strong feelings. This is from the South London Press, and it's true. It's a 400-year-old oak tree which has been felled by the council. It's been slammed as ecocide by neighbours. It was cut down last week with chainsaws. It's just the picture here. It's just a stump now, basically. A resident say that they pleaded with workers to stop because there were concerns that actually, well, firstly, the tree was healthy, but also that it was on public land. A couple of residents, they applied for the tree to be protected in 2020. One of them, Rebecca Masica, said it's a great example of bureaucracy ending up in ecocide. The council wants our support for climate emergency action plans, but here is a case where a perfectly healthy 400-year-old tree, which we're so lucky to have in our neighbourhood, has now come down. And you know, some people may have a lot of sympathy with that, at the same time that councils have been very heavy in touting their eco-credentials. A tree, which we know is so important for the environment, is being taken down.
Well, we've heard then what the neighbours have said, as you said, very strong feelings. What have Merton Council said then?
What Merton say is that the tree was diseased and was at risk of falling onto garages, and that the planning application of its removal was approved in June. They say that the process took into consideration the assessment carried out by the council's tree officer that found that the oak tree had significant basal cavity, causing it to become brittle and unsafe, and that there will be the planting of a new semi-mature English oak tree in its place. So it's a very complicated tale. At one point, while the people cutting it down were up there, tree officers shouted up to them that there was a dispute over whose land the tree stands on, but they refused to come down unless there was a written revocation of the order, so they continued soaring away.
Well, let's move on now. It is festival season across London, as we know. We've had festivals in Hyde Park, Victoria Park coming up, and Finsbury Park. But Finsbury Park residents aren't too happy about it.
No, and kind of 'twas ever does. A lot of these festivals don't always meet with the pleasure of local residents. But here in the Islington Gazette, we have residents in Haringey have signed a petition, 1,400 people so far, so not insignificant, called Hands Off Our Park, trying to stop the big concerts that you've got in Finsbury Park. Recently, Cardi B was there, Nicki Minaj, and the Friends of Finsbury Park said that since the start of the pandemic, that the park has been a haven for play, exercise and social time. And indeed, a lot of people will it'll ring true that for a lot of people, they discovered their local parks for the first time when we were allowed to walk around them for an hour a day in lockdown. But now that events have returned, they say that to enable 5 days of major events, more than half the park is removed from public use for most of July, and that it's enclosed with a 3-metre high wall and a moat. And they talk about the HGVs and the fuel fuel used, a disorder over the weekend because at the weekend there was the Wireless Festival. I believe the police had to be called to deal with some slight disorder there. And they say that over the Wimbledon fortnight, the tennis courts were closed. I didn't quite understand this at first, but what it means is, I suppose, that at the one time of year that a lot of young people, kids, are exposed to tennis, that they weren't actually able to go and take it up locally because they shut the tennis courts to have the festival there.
Right, so a petition signed, as you said, over 1,000 people signed it. What have Haringey Council said then?
Julia Davis, who is the Cabinet Member for Communities and Civic Life, said that actually people should be celebrating the fact that they have world-class superstars like Cardi B and Nicki Minaj performing in our borough. I'll take their word for it. I'm a little bit old to know who they really are. They say that Finsbury Park have got a long history of staging big events, and with COVID restricting the lives of our young people for so long, music events like this help bring our communities back together to appreciate arts, culture and music. So it sounds like there's going to be no movement from their side.
Absolutely. Well, finally, let's take a look at this last story. Another gripe, you could say. It seems the effects of the pandemic are long-lasting on a certain pub in North London.
Yeah, I suppose it's a similar story. It's another thing that things changed and perhaps changed attitudes during lockdown. This is in the Ham and High, and it's people complaining about a pub called The Flask in Highgate, which people may know. It's quite a fine pub. But like all pubs, when they came out of lockdown, they introduced just table service and apps, etc. But they have decided to keep this going post-pandemic, going forward. It's not been met with pleasure universally, and the Ham and High have been talking to one 82-year-old gentleman, Peter Ward, who went to be told by a barman it was table service only. He said, "I replied that I've been drinking in the Flask for nigh on 50 years, and why can't he serve me?" He said, because the place was busy at the time, but there was nobody at the bar, they were all outside being waited on by staff. What has happened to the English pub? A pub is a place where people gather at the bar for a pint or two, meet other like-minded folk and chat amiably. He said the pub is now a restaurant.
Oh, wow. I mean, I suppose it might be quite difficult if you've been drinking somewhere for 50 years and it's all changed. But perhaps the Great British Pub has evolved.
Yeah, and what the guy who runs the pub, Grant Hawthorne, has said is actually it's because it's got a very tiny bar area. It gets very clogged up, which is one of the downsides of having a historic pub. And as a result, they've taken the decision to stop people sitting or standing at the bar and encourage them to take advantage of the table service we offer.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Withers, thank you so much for joining us. A roundup of the local papers there with Matt. Now, according to a new survey, only 9% take advantage of the expertise of pharmacy workers. In the capital and beyond, they are available as a source of advice and information on lowering our risks of serious health conditions. For example, just 2% of people say they visited their pharmacist for a blood pressure check in the past year, despite an estimated 4.8 million people in the UK living with undiagnosed high blood pressure. Well, pharmacist Jonathan Bridget told Alicia more.
Traditionally, pharmacists have been viewed as, for dispensing prescription medicines and medicines experts. But I think in the future it'll be much more about healthy living advice, services that pharmacy can provide. A great example is blood pressure. There are nearly 5 million people in the UK with undiagnosed high blood pressure, and there's a new NHS service, a free NHS service, where you can go to your pharmacy, have a free blood pressure check and follow up by the pharmacist, and then be formally referred into the GP if the indications are that you might have high blood pressure. So, as I say, traditionally medicines, but going forward it'll be much more about services and information and advice.
Lots of people, might feel unwell or have something they're concerned about, will immediately go to call the GP and might not be able to get an appointment for some time. Going to the pharmacist, obviously there is that option to just walk in. What kinds of things should people go to the pharmacist for? Where do we draw the line here?
Well, if I took what we're trying to do, I'm a pharmacist. I work for Tesco Pharmacy, and what we've been trying to do is work with 3 of the bigger health charity partners. So that's Diabetes UK, Cancer Research UK, and the British Heart Foundation. And we've done some training for our pharmacy teams, so some unique training across those 3 conditions. to really help people go to the pharmacy to get health advice about reducing the risk factors. So in each of those cases, in terms of type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart and circulatory disease, lots of incidences can be prevented if someone makes small changes in their lifestyle. So healthy living advice, such as managing your weight, eating well, being more active, right the way through to stop smoking support, cutting down on alcohol consumption, all that sort of thing can make a huge difference in the long term in terms of some pretty big health conditions that affect the UK.
And there might be certain times where you would suggest people don't come to the pharmacy. What kinds of issues might people be having where you would say actually stay at home, call 111?
I think what we're not trying to do is create sort of diagnostic experts in pharmacy. I think that's we're specially trained people, but we're not specialists in the diseases. So obviously things with requiring urgent medical care, as you say, should go down one route. But also, if someone is coming in with concerning symptoms, we're there to talk to them about those symptoms, and our pharmacists are aware of common signs of symptoms of those diseases. But we would very much refer them into the right channel for further diagnosis and confirmation. So we're not diagnostic experts, but we're there to sort of direct people in the right way.
Are people listening to their bodies better from your experience? Do you think people are more aware now, perhaps with the the internet and the ways that people are able to go elsewhere for help?
I think absolutely. I think so. People, people are more informed via the internet of common signs and symptoms. I think the example with cancer is that the recommendation from Cancer Research UK is if something isn't right for you, if something's changed and something isn't normal for your body, then that's a signal that you should have a conversation with someone and follow up on it. There are so many, for example, symptoms of cancer that it's impossible to be precise about it. So if something isn't normal for you, then you should go and talk to someone about it.
That was Jonathan Bridget speaking with Alicia there. You're watching London Live News with Helena Wadia. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, did you know Freddie Mercury was an avid stamp collector? One museum in London is set to display the stamps of the Queen legend, marking the 50th anniversary of the UK Pride movement.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of the stories affecting Londoners today. Suella Braverman has been eliminated from the Conservative leadership race after finishing last in the second round of voting with 27 votes. Well, Rishi Sunak topped the poll with 101 votes, with Penny Mordaunt following close behind on 83 votes. Well, Liz Truss remains in the race to replace Boris Johnson with 64 votes. And just before the results were announced, she launched her campaign for the leadership in central London, promising bold economic leadership and saying she's ready from day one.
Now is the time to be bold. We cannot have business as usual economic management, which has led to low growth for decades. We need to deliver on Brexit and the opportunities it offers. And we need to win the fight for freedom at home and around the world. Yeah. That is why I am putting myself forward for leadership of the Conservative and Unionist Party and our great country. I will campaign as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. I can lead, I can make tough decisions and I can get things done. I am ready to be Prime Minister from day one.
Well, also in the race is Kemi Badenoch with 49 votes and Tom Tugendhat with 32, 5 fewer votes than in the first round. Well, allies of Tugendhat insisted he would not pull out of the leadership contest despite coming last in this round of voting, as he vowed to continue the campaign.
This is a really short interview round for a hell of a big job. I don't think it's that surprising that people who know all of us are pretty vocal about what they think of us. And I've had some friends say some very nice things about me. And I've had some people who I thought were friends saying things that were not quite so nice about me. So, you know, we all have to roll with it. That's part of the game.
Well, Tory MPs will continue to vote in subsequent rounds until 2 candidates are left, who will then battle it out over the summer to win the support of Conservative members, with their choice of the next Prime Minister being unveiled on September the 5th. Well, Boris Johnson will then formally hand over his resignation to the Queen. Now, the Metropolitan Police say they have opened an investigation into Sir Mo Farah's recent revelation that he was trafficked to the UK as a child. In a documentary for the BBC, Sir Mo said he arrived to the UK under a false name after escaping war in Somalia. Having previously said he came to the UK as a refugee with his parents, the runner now revealed he was taken in by a stranger and forced to be a domestic servant. The Met have now said specialist officers have opened an investigation and will assess the evidence, although no reports have been made to the force at this time. The Home Office have said the athlete will face no action. The airline Emirates has announced that it will ignore an order from Heathrow Airport to cancel flights to comply with a cap on passenger numbers. The airline accused the West London Airport of giving them only 36 hours to comply with the capacity cuts and said they did not want to deny seats to tens of thousands of travellers. Well, on Tuesday, Heathrow announced a cap of 100,000 daily departing passengers until early September, leading to disruption and delays for passengers. Emirates called the plan unreasonable and said they would continue to operate as scheduled to and from Heathrow. Well, in a statement, a Heathrow spokeswoman said they had no choice, adding it would be disappointing if any airline would want to put profit ahead of a safe and reliable passenger journey. London is set to get its first surfing centre, which will see 2-metre-high waves. The proposal would be built on 100 acres of land in the Lee Valley Regional Park in Edmonton in North London and is said to cost an estimated £45 million. Well, the plans have been unveiled by the company behind the same idea called The Wave Bristol. The plans need to be approved by Enfield Council and the Mayor of London, but if they are, the artificial surfing centre will be built into a new leisure, health and fitness hub. Now, the Postal Museum is displaying the childhood stamp albums of a Queen legend. Freddie Mercury's 54-page album consists of stamps from the British Commonwealth and reveals not only his early life in Zanzibar, but also his artistic talent. The display is part of the celebrations to mark the 50th anniversary of the UK Pride movement. Let's take a look.
We decided to display our Freddie Mercury stamp album to coincide with Pride 50. Along with the album, we'll also have on display Royal Mail's new Pride stamps, which were issued on the 1st of July. So together we'll be showing his childhood stamp album along with these new Pride stamps which have come out this year. I always love putting an exhibition together. It's always great fun. And it's always great to be able to really delve into an item. Sometimes you only see surface level of the item, so it's been great to look through all of the pages throughout the album. So there are 54 pages in there, and they're all different countries from around the world. A lot of them are from the British Commonwealth, and also from Zanzibar, which is where Freddie Mercury was born. But we have all examples from the UK as far as Eastern Europe as well. We understand, obviously, that Freddie Mercury is an icon for the LGBT+ community, and we really thought with this monumentous kind of 50-year anniversary, it would be great to display the album. It hasn't actually been on display in our museum before, so this is the first time that it's been on display, and it's perfect to coincide with the stamps issued by Royal Mail. They came out on Friday, the 1st of July, and they were designed by an illustrator called Sophie Birkin. And they're a great way of looking at the history of the UK Pride movement and also the diversity of the LGBT+ community. So we really hope to really show people a little bit more about what we have here. I think when you come to a museum, you only see a few items that we've got space to display. There's so much more that we've got in our archive. So it's great to be able to rotate new material into the display and show people new things and kind of also show people a little bit of an insight into Freddie Mercury's childhood. We know so much of him as this kind of iconic music figure, but this is a great example to be able to delve back into his childhood and actually look at a hobby which many people did do when they were children, of stamp collecting. We've actually had his stamp collection since 1993, actually, when it was purchased along with his father's stamp collection. And it's been on display at stamp shows. We've sent it to even Australia to stamp shows around the world, and it's been to Queen fan events and things like that. But this is the first time at the Postal Museum we've been able to display it. But people tend to love the fact that he touched it, he curated it. Well, you'll notice in the pictures that we've got on the website, and also if you get to come to the museum, that he arranged the stamps really in interesting ways. It's very artistic. He looks at the kind of the colour and the shape of the stamp. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to be able to just see kind of an insight into his childhood and kind of what he thought was artistic and beautiful. People have been really excited to see it. We have had people in the past who've come to see it personally, and it is that idea of like, he touched this, he made this, and people do get very excited. Queen is such a huge band, and obviously Freddie Mercury is so iconic as a member of it. So it's been really positive so far, and hopefully it will kind of show people a little bit of a different side of Freddie, which would be nice to see.
Lovely stuff. That album is on display now until the 30th of October this year, so there's plenty of time to catch that one. Time for a final break now, but when we come back, a new musical about the millennial generation. We'll be speaking to the cast of the show, launching in London's Off West End. See you soon.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. Now, London's only contemporary art biennial is back this summer, celebrating the borough of Brent. This year's edition is called The House of My Love and brings together a group of artists and community groups from the borough. It explores the various strategies for homemaking within the context of hostile environments. Well, Henry spoke to those behind the project to see who's involved and why community engagement is so important in the area.
So the exhibition asks how and why the act of making home can be a form of resistance and survival to experiences of racism, homophobia, ableism, climate catastrophe, and political austerity. And we're thinking about how home, not just a physical home, but also immaterial gestures of making home can be part of the ways in which individuals and communities survive and resist those experiences.
So, Lois, why did you decide to go with these sorts of themes then?
So Brent is a very diverse community. It is one of the most diverse places in London. We've got over 149 languages that are spoken in the borough alone. So really, the theme, the idea of the biannual came from the London Borough of Culture when the borough was the Borough of Culture, and really exploring what does it mean to be from Brent? What does it mean to live in this place? So the idea that Eliel's come up with of exploring home and in the House of My Love is something that's really close to a lot of people here in the borough that have come from all over the world, that have had to settle in the borough, find ways of home, form new communities and work together. So really, I think it's inspired very much by the people that live here. The stories that I hear, the different cultures that I hear. So it kind of is really responding to what we've got in the borough and what's interesting about the borough.
So, Eliel, can you talk me through some of the pieces that people can see then that are inspired by the different stories and different communities within the borough of Brent?
There's a film, for instance, by these two Brent-based artists called Turab Shah and Awa Burawa, who run this film project as well titled Other Cinemas. And we commissioned them to produce their first fiction film. And this film explores, from the lens of three characters, various experiences of ruptures with home. And these stories were kind of gathered. So Turab and Awa interviewed lots of migrant communities from the borough and gathered sort of like various experiences of moments of rupture with home, either because of the death of a parent, because of the loss of a home in a place that you cannot return to ever again, or because of realizing that the life that you once have doesn't really exist anymore. You now have a new life somewhere else. So these moments of rupture are captured in the film in various ways through these three characters.
Lois, I think Eliel's touched upon it, fantastically there. But we've already mentioned that the borough itself is a very diverse borough. I think it's actually the second most diverse borough in London. How important then is it that we tell the stories of those who live in the borough from so many different backgrounds?
It's really imperative. So, we're in a borough where 149 languages are spoken. As I've already said, there's communities from all over the world that live in the borough. But often what we see in mainstream media, in our museums, in our galleries, and our TV, it's maybe one story or of one community, mostly a kind of white community. So I think, the biannual really exploring some of these kind of issues that are really at the heart of our community are really important. And the point of the biannual really is to give a much bigger platform to some really important, really interesting stories that are not being heard. And we really want audiences and people to come into the borough and find out about a new, really exciting multicultural London that they might not see in other parts of in the other parts of the city. And we really hope the biennial will be able to kind of show that to people.
In terms of community engagement, what are you hoping that this can do for the area?
I think for me and Metroland, the organisation that are organising the biennial, we really believe that art doesn't just live in the museum or in the gallery. It has a real opportunity and a real potential to be able to broker and have conversations with the community in ways in which we find words hard or speaking hard, and art and music, visual arts in this case, can really help broker those different types of conversations. And Eliel can talk a little bit more to it, but community engagement is not just something we do on the side. It's at the very heart of this biannual. Every one of these commissions have been developed with the community at heart, whether it's an experience of a community or an individual in the community, or working directly in collaboration with organisations like the Asian Women's Resource Centre or Young Roots. But everything we're doing is really about thinking, how can artists and artistic practice allow us to have really difficult conversations and help us make things visible that have not always been seen before. So it's really at the heart of what we do and what we believe as an organisation, that we don't think art is just something you should see at the weekend in the museum. It's something that kind of keeps us alive and keeps us going, and is really at the heart of everything we're doing.
There we go. That's on across the borough until the 11th of September. Now, a new musical called Millennials is being shown in the capital's off-West End at the Other Palace Studio Theatre. The play, which is written and composed by Elliot Clay, delves into the life, trials and tribulations for the millennial generation. Well, Maddie spoke to the cast to find out more.
There's no main story. In fact, there's lots of little stories, and we meet this group of millennials who each share with us a very personal story about their life. And some of those stories are really funny, and some of them are quite heartbreaking. And it gives us a flavour of the lives of a generation.
I am one of the 6 millennials in the piece, and as Elliot has so eloquently put, you just get little snippets of stories from each of these characters. So I just have my own little role within that, I suppose.
It definitely has something to say about the world that we live in today and the issues that not just young people, not just millennials, not just any generation face. And what was crucial for me when I was writing it was I wanted to address these big social issues, but not do it in a way that feels like box ticking, and not does it in a way that feels disingenuous. And also, I was very clear that even though the title is Millennials, and obviously that word is quite a loaded word, lots of people have different opinions, good or bad, on what that word means, that I was really hopeful that it wouldn't just be a piece that spoke only to that generation. And actually we found that our audiences, whether they're much younger or much older than that generation, have found something in it that they go, oh yeah, I relate to that. So it's more about the ideas of being millennials, that label, and what that label means, and all its good and bad and avocado glory.
When I'm doing the piece, when I'm in the piece, it's because of the venue that we have a really, really beautiful intimate space, and I love intimate venues in terms of being an audience member and in terms of being a performer, because I love that kind of one-to-one connection that you can have in those kind of spaces, and that real kind of like human to human, rather than when you're on a really big stage or something. Sometimes it can feel a little bit it feels a little bit like you're on TV when you're on a really huge stage, because it doesn't feel like they're really there or like you're really speaking to them. But in the really kind of tight venue that we've got, it means that you can have people bopping along. You can literally see people in the split second reacting to what you're saying as you're saying it to them, and you can see them. You can see when people are switched on. You can see people when you've lost people's attention or they're falling asleep. You can literally watch them fall asleep, and I kind of love that, because I love that proper live response that theatre is so built on.
So our set and lighting designer, Andrew Exeter, is a genius, and he has come up with this amazing way of transforming the Other Palace studio, which up until now has only really been used for workshops of musicals or sort of more cabaret style events. And it was quite dark, a little bit plain, sort of like dark walls. And now we've got this amazing Technicolor pink world with a massive giant avocado stage in the middle. And we've created this sort of immersive environment where people descend down the stairs, they follow the trail of avocado stickers and can escape into this world for an hour and 10 minutes. And they have the chance to be in the space beforehand for sort of half an hour or so to sort of play in the ball pit or sit on the gummy bear chairs. And what we found is that no matter what age you are, when you come down, it takes you back to a very nostalgic place and fully immerses you in this world for an hour and 10 minutes. And a lot of people have said to us that they're like, oh, I want to come back, and I want to be back in that in that world, or they want to come back and say, oh, I want to sit in a different place, because wherever you sit, you get a different interaction with a different cast member, or you see something different, you can play with something different, and it's a very visceral and just an amazing experience just to watch people come in and see their reaction when they walk in.
There we go. That all looks very fun. And that musical is on from today until the 7th of August. Right, time for a final check on the weather now. And as expected, it's hot, hot, hot. This evening, it's another warm night with average temperatures of 13 degrees. Tomorrow, there's some cloud with sunny intervals and a gentle breeze, temperatures averaging 26. Over the weekend, it's heating up, 27 on Saturday, and as we hit Sunday, temperatures around 32. And a reminder, the Met Office has issued an amber warning of extreme heat. So do stay prepared, drink lots of water, and look after yourselves. Right, that's all from us this evening. For updates throughout the day, do head over to our social channels. You can find us in all the usual places at London Live. But from now, from all of us, have a lovely evening. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock.